Do you own an electrical contracting company and you're trying to get from like that mom and pop stage to like the next stage where you're scaling and growing your company? Check this conversation out. This is for you. So I got to talk to Sean Samson from Sean Samson Training. This dude is very knowledgeable. He's kind of a talking head in our industry. He's been on stages speaking to people. He talks about growing your business, and he's developed some strategies along the way. He's helped hundreds of companies across different countries around the world in trying to strategize and figure out, like, this is how you used to be running things, and if you want to grow, here's what you need to do to start scaling your company. So this is a killer conversation. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, so whether you are an established company and you're trying to grow, or you're a new company, you're trying to figure out some kind of a growth strategy, there seems to be a pattern with electrical contracting and kind of all trades contracting in general. It's not very hard to get to $1 million in revenue and have, 3 or 4 people in a truck, some helpers going and running, doing service calls. But there's always this problem when you try to get to like 50 million. There's a scaling problem. And I think it's largely because companies have to operate much differently when they're thinking big versus when they're just kind of mom and pop small. So I've got Sean Samson here with Sean Samson Training. Sean, you have very specifically worked with a lot of companies. You've helped scale companies. So not the little mom and pops, but you've brought people up to scale. And your method of doing it is around these kind of multi-year service contracts. So I just wanted to bring you in and have a conversation today about growth and scaling companies. So
sure.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Yeah.
So what I think is really interesting is that you've kind of figured out this way to introduce like the NFPA 70B and the 70E, some of these other code books in figuring out a way for electricians to have maintenance contracts. And that's not something electricians are used to, is having like repeat contract business. So can you kind of explain a little bit of like, what do you guys do?
Sure. Very, very simply, we take, and you know this, and I'm sure that 99% of your listeners know that the electrical contracting industry, or the electrical contractor, is a transactional based business.
Yeah, very much.
Right. So what we do is we take which isn't easy, by the way. We take a transactional based business and turn them into a recurring revenue, multi-year service agreement, consistent touch point business, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And it's not easy because contractors are very used to doing the same things over and over and over again. There's a comfort level to being comfortable, and they're really good at that. And I guess you could look at that from across all genres and different types of businesses. When you've been doing something like the electrical contracting industry has done over the past 100 years, they're used to contracting, man. That's what they do. They're not used to, nor do they want somebody coming in from the outside and telling them that their baby is ugly. You know?
That's a good point.
It really is. It's a thing. And
well, at the same time, they're going to sit and scratch their head and keep doing the same thing over and over and over, year after year, because it's all they've ever seen and it's all they ever know.
Right.
So being an electrician, this is one thing that's always interested me. Like, I have friends that are HVAC, and it seems like HVAC very specifically has this niche. Their materials and their install is a lot shorter than ours, but they have big equipment that needs to constantly be checked on over time. So it makes sense to set up recurring revenue and have maintenance on that equipment. And it's just like, man, that's, instead of having to just take new calls and do new jobs all the time and seek out new business, you're just using your existing customer base to be a bedrock so you can grow. And I feel like electricians don't have that opportunity. So what do you know that we don't?
Well, the electrical contractor has the same amount of opportunities as the mechanical contractor. The problem is that the electrical contractor still looks at themselves as a 100-year-old startup. And we all know that, after mechanical contractor installs and they get to the end of their project, they're going to go in and they're going to take the meetings with those building owners. They're going to take the meetings with those management companies. They're going to take the meetings with the people that are in charge of, protecting the continuity of that business. The mindset of the electrical contractor is really wacky because their objective is to get in and get out as fast as they can. mechanical contractors have had this figured out for a long time. They want to get in, they want to stay in. Electrical contractors want to get out, and they want to get out as fast as they possibly can. They have made the decision. And by the way, the electrical contracting industry right now is going through a metamorphosis. Because you have new blood coming in. You have sons and daughters taking over, grandpa's companies, dad's companies, aunts and uncles' companies. They understand relationship selling. They're paying more attention to what the industry is giving them from the codes and standards perspective. I like to think that, we're laying a lot of the groundwork for that education on that, but the electrical contracting industry really is going through a big change right now. And that change is these contractors understanding what the industry is giving them, and they've ignored it for a long time. And it's always been in front of their faces, by the way, Dustin. And the things that they've given them is they've given them NFPA 70B. The industry has given them NFPA 70E, and they've given them the NEC, the code that polices from a perspective of pull-through work, repairs, and replacement for all the things that they would see once they put together a service agreement that's developed around both of those 70E and 70B standards. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, they're too busy contracting. It's funny. I was telling you as we were getting set for the call that I just want to write down a couple of quick notes. And it's interesting, the current contractor business model. If I was to ask a contractor, look, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to build a business plan on high volume, high risk, low margin, no sales process or selling strategy and follow-up, and little to no differentiation in product, services, or skill sets. Can you go out there and do that for me?
That's kind of funny.
Right?
Yeah.
And what have they done? They've done exactly that. They've built a business on that craziness that I was just talking about. And they've been successful on building a business that way, but it's been built on value. It's been built on the more that I bid, the more I'm going to win, the longer I'm going to be able to keep my lights on. And because I have more revenue, that means I get to hire more people. Well, the problem is that that's not scaling. That's just hiring because I have more dollars now.
Yeah.
And once you have the ebbs and flows, or you understand the ebbs and flows of contracting, like what happened in 2008, 2009, right?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of friends that closed shop, man, because they didn't take the service and maintenance side of their business seriously. It was always this afterthought of, well, we're contractor first. Yeah, we do some service, but when we get to that is when we get to that. And then all of a sudden, when shit hits the fan, you're like, holy cow, I probably should have spent more time in building out those strategies and, onboarding the right technology, the right skill sets, weeding through our service team and seeing who are my best service technicians that I can start developing programs with and follow-ups and all these things. And, hindsight's 20/20, man. But when when the market is great, man, people don't listen.
Oh yeah, everyone's just throwing money around, build new, build, add to. But yeah, when times are tough, like the people that have money keep their money and they fix what they have. And so as any kind of contractor, you have to be able to shift gears to keep your company going. But it's kind of interesting because you're right. I think most people only think about that when times are tough.
100%.
They don't really build a core model around their business of, if we get a customer, let's keep them and let's keep getting revenue over time.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's just genius.
Yeah.
Well, so this kind of does seem, though, that this is more of a commercial leaning thing, right? Like residential people, there's no in for me to build multi-year contracts with them.
I agree. Unless you're at unless you're a contractor, that services or has clientele of very, very, very high-end homes, or you're a contractor that works with a builder that's building, $5, $10, $20 million homes, those are the homes that may make sense for service contracts, because if I'm building a $5 or $10 million house, odds are that I don't want to do anything.
Right.
And
you want the people that build it to do everything for you.
Of course. Yeah. Exactly. But we know that, those are, the consistency in those isn't very consistent, right? I'm sure they exist. It's not my area. My area is training the contractors and working with the contractors that have a very heavy presence in commercial, industrial data centers, manufacturing, distribution. They have relationships with large universities. Looking at those types of verticals where if those businesses fail, if the assets fail, business interruption, life safety, how does that affect their business, man? And that's really where these agreements come into play, is knowing what's inclusive of the standards, but knowing how to sell, like understanding the subject of selling within the electrical contracting industry is a thing, man, right? Because contractors don't look at themselves as sales organizations. They look at themselves as contractors, right?
Right.
And it's a paradigm. It really is a paradigm shift, man. And that's the reason why our tagline for Sean Samson Training really is contracting reimagined, because you have to understand again that you're a sales organization. The last time I checked, 100% of your revenue comes from somebody else.
Yeah, and them calling and like convincing them that you're going to come out into their home, and then when you're out there being like, oh well, this, and this are also wrong. You might want to think about this.
Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of like upselling people don't realize.
And their home meaning their business, or their or the hospital that they're in charge of, or the data center where you can calculate business interruption based on the data center, $200,000 an hour. $100,000 a minute, depending on what data they're holding, who their clients are, where they're at. There's lots of variables, but yeah, I mean, it really is a thing, man. So you have two different buckets. You have to understand the technical side of what the industry is giving you, and you have to understand the sales side of selling service agreements and understanding that it's a very consultative sale when you are speaking with directors of facilities, facility engineers, maintenance managers, right? Those types of people that have been hired to hopefully make good decisions, to onboard the right service contracts, the right contractors to help him complement what he's already doing, maybe with his internal teams even.
Yeah. And in my experience, these people are usually at their wits' end with a ton of different contractors. So if you're a facility, an engineer, supervising engineer, or a facility manager, you want to have some contractors that you never have to worry about. If there's a problem, they're there. You want relationship built up with these contractors. And when you say sales, I hear relationships. So it's not just about calling and cold calling people and then sales. It's like, no, building a reputation, like having these people want to call you because they love having you around. Right. When your people are on a job site, they're very respectful and they, they follow through with the things that they say. So it's like having the skill of being good at what you're doing, but also building relationship and showing that like, I'm the only one you need around here and I'm the only one that you want to hire.
Yeah. Well, look at being a sole source provider is a real thing. If you look at the vertical markets that we just talked about, those vertical markets, whether you're healthcare, manufacturing, the majority of those vertical markets are dealing with a number of contractors, right? They're dealing with a number of contractors. A great example is a hospital may be dealing with 3 or 4 different contractors. He's got one contractor that does all their de-energized work for them. He's got another contractor that does their breaker testing, another contractor that does all their oil field transformer testing and analysis, right? Then he's got a contractor that comes in and does all their infrared. Then he's got a contractor that does nothing but services transfer switches. So, he's got, 3, 4, 5 different contractors that he's working with. And most contractors don't understand that in order to be the sole source provider, you have to have some sort of process to go out and speak with your existing customer base, to let your existing customer base know that you can probably do all of those things. I mean, if I'm a guy from a healthcare facility or manufacturer, it's much easier for me to deal with one sole source provider. Like, it's too much of a pain in the ass for me to know I got 5 different contractors doing 5 different things. But if I got one sole source provider that I can go to for everything, even if that one sole source provider subs some other things out because they technically can't do those things, of course, if I'm running those businesses, I would want to deal with just Dustin. Why wouldn't I want to do that, right? But somehow the contractors are comfortable with all these other contractors being in the same facility as them, and you have to find a way to kick out the competition, man. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here is how do I kick out the competition?
Yeah. So, okay, I wanted to like pivot a little bit and just talk about you on that note. Like, you've probably seen a lot of businesses, hundreds of businesses that you've helped, grow. You've probably seen some patterns over time with like things that people are doing wrong consistently. So can you talk a little bit about like, what are some of the biggest things that people do wrong?
The biggest reasons why businesses can't scale is because they're more comfortable in not knowing.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
They're more comfortable in not knowing how to do things. They're more comfortable in not knowing or not understanding how to develop processes and procedures to cover the handoff to the handoff to the handoff within their own organizations.
Okay.
They're far more comfortable in other words, they're comfortable in doing what they're doing, and and if they don't know, they're okay with not knowing because what they're thinking right now is working for them. They're making money, they're employing people, the lights are on, and they're doing what they set out to do. So I think, if you're looking for patterns in what I usually see, you either see one of two types of contractors. You either have a contractor that is very well led, very well managed, and they may not understand sales, but they understand the powers of relationship selling and connection points with customers. If you have a management team or a leadership team that understands it, they may not know how to do it. They may not understand how to develop the business model. They may have strategic planning and still be very kind of log jammed and stymied in how to get those things going. But as long as they understand that, then you're in good shape, because then we actually have a starting point to help scale those folks out. Or you simply have a contractor that is the exact opposite of that, Dustin. And that is a contractor that is just very, very happy with the way his grandfather built the business. They started out in 1950. It's 2025. There's not really a lot of difference from a revenue perspective. They've kept people working, and they're good at, there's a caveat here, they're good at one or two really particular things, and they continue to do one or two of those particular things. Now, me personally, I love those one or two particular things, because I can turn those one or two particular things, if I am the expert in one or two of those things, I can build out those one or two things and probably build a recurring revenue model around developing the contracts for what those one or two things are that I'm really good at, or that I might be the subject expert at.
Okay. But it does seem like you would have a lot of other work to do with them as well, right? From just like the sales relationship side of things.
Yeah, it's the contractor that continues to do the same things over and over again. Those are the contractors that don't realize that they probably have a niche because they're doing the same things over and over again. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's if you looked at the normal contractor, if you looked at a typical website, 99% of all of the electrical contracting websites out there have a list of about 25 to 30 things that they do, maybe more. The fact is that that's not true. The fact is that they've done those things in the past, but the things that they're really good at start going like this. And the things that they're really experts at and have the skill sets to do the things start going like this.
Yeah.
And developing your niche and understanding what your electrical contracting business is good at is really where you need to start. So those are the things that I have seen or haven't seen is those organizations themselves not even understanding what their niche is or what their market is asking of them, if you follow me on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because at that point, I'm just a labor broker.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're going to come in, I'm going to come in, we're both going to look at the lighting retrofit. Mine's going to be $225,000. Yours is going to be $228,000. There's not going to be a lot of difference in X, Y, and Z. So what are they really buying? They're buying price.
Yeah.
And contractors know that when you sell price, man, you're going to have some issues, man, right?
For sure, because everybody wants the cheapest price, right?
And everybody wants the cheapest price. And if you would just slow down and take a meeting with that customer, instead of emailing your quote over, take a meeting with them, get with them. I need to get with you to explain to you what is you're looking at in your lighting retrofit, why the cost is what it is, the technology I'm using, the skill sets of my team, why I keyed in on those critical areas for you, all of these things that matter, instead of just pushing and emailing a quote over. I always say to customers, and I always train people, if you're gonna be up against a contractor, ask the customer, have you ever decided on a price or a quote that was a higher price and quote simply because you knew it was a better fit for your business? Ask that question.
That's good.
Because if a customer says, well, there's been a couple of times, man, where, we have chosen this higher X, Y, and Z thing simply because my team said, you know what, that makes better sense. If that's the case, then it's not a price thing. If that's the case, then I'm dealing with a user that is open-minded, and I need to capitalize on that open mind process of his so that I can sell my agreement, especially if my agreement is at a higher amount than what he said he wanted to sign off on or what they said they had budgeted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I've been in sales, so I have some experience with at least the theory behind selling. And I think a lot of people, unless you've had a sales job, you don't realize what it's like to get no's over and over and over and have to kind of reshift your strategy and your message to figure out what works. But the one thing that I've found, like, time and time again, is that the more questions you ask and the less you sell, this is what I have, the more you start asking questions and just figuring out who the people are, you start to figure out what their pain points and what their problems are, and then you know how to pitch them something. But a lot of people just don't ask the questions. So I think you're right. Like, you can't just sell and push and push. You have to figure out what these people need.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, where contractors just kind of want to get in and get out on stuff. They don't look at themselves as sales organizations. How can I put together a price for a project and not ask questions, especially when I get on site with somebody, right? Dustin, are you the guy that's going to give the go-ahead on the project?
Yeah.
Dustin, I'm assuming that since I'm here, you guys already have us budgeted, right, man? Yeah, Sean, we already have it budgeted. And you're the guy that's going to give up. Is there anybody else in your decision-making process that's going to be involved in the decision-making process of this, or is this just you, man? Yeah. So I'm assuming that you guys, or I'm assuming, Dustin, as we're walking your facility, you guys have already figured out that you want this thing implemented and started on within the next 30 days? Next 60 days? Like, I have to ask those questions because contractors get murdered on just being contractors. Like, time is money, man. I can't just leave my office, go walk a 50,000 or 100,000 square foot facility and put together a scope of work and then go like that.
Yeah. Just send.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. That is not good. It's not good time management. It doesn't make you look professional. There is zero differentiation between you and the other 70,000 contractors that are out there. So, the things that are going to make you different, this is always the same question I always ask at all of these folks that we work with. What makes you different, man? And the answer to that is the way that you sell and the way that you connect with people. Those are the two things that make electrical contractors different. It's not that you have the highest trained people. You're supposed to have the highest trained people.
Right. Yeah.
It's not that you have
You're a business.
Exactly. It's not that you have the best safety record, the nicest trucks, the nicest uniforms, the greatest customer service. Like, as a buyer, I'm expecting all that shit anyways.
Right. You got a license number on your truck, like
right.
That makes you the same. But the
Exactly.
difference is the ways that you treat people and talk to people.
Right.
The ways that you offer solutions to things. The amount of times that I've been on like a 3-month wait for work and people would just wait and they would pay anything just because of the way that I made them feel. You know, the time spent like understanding who they are and kind of being, like you said, being a consultant. And anytime there's a problem, I'm taking care of them. That's a huge difference in just being like calling electric company. You know, like when
Sure.
they talk to me, I understand who they are, their needs, their family. Do they have kids? What are their dogs' names? Like I just build this huge picture and just make them feel like, holy crap, like I feel so comfortable with this being the guy. I don't care about anyone else, or if he's more expensive, I'll pay it.
This is a good, if you don't mind, this is a good spot for understanding contractors for them to understand how to differentiate and to really get the eyes and ears of customers and clients, which, by the way, huge difference between customers and clients.
That's a hell of a point.
Nobody wants a customer. Anybody that has a brain wants a client, and you know those are the folks that you want to solicit are your clients, and everybody understands. Maybe they don't. Should understand the difference between customer and client, and we can talk about that. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was one of the sharks, Robert Hervacek. I'm probably butchering his name. He's one of the sharks on Shark Tank. And I wrote down what he said because it is perfect to understanding the electrical contractor. And what he said that general knowledge doesn't get rewarded. He says specific knowledge does. Skill sets get rewarded. So if general knowledge doesn't get rewarded, that means that from a perspective of being a contractor, general knowledge means that we've all gone through 5-year apprentice programs. We've all been through training. We all have a lot of the same products and services. We all talk the same talk, but we don't understand how to differentiate our skill sets with our current customer and client base. So of course, I'm not going to get rewarded on anything different because my customers don't know that I do things different. So of course it's a price conversation. How can I expect to get rewarded if I am piggybacking off of the same things as what you're doing, or the same things as what this contractor is doing, or so on and so forth? So the only way to make that differentiation in getting rewarded in the difference in knowledge and skill sets is for contractors to go out and visit their customer and client base to help those clients understand what it is that they do differently. Because there's a lot of money being lost with their current customer and client base because even their own customers and clients don't know what they do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Or they just assume that they do the same thing as every other electrician, so what does it matter? We can just call any of them.
That's exactly it. So of course I'm going to get rewarded for general knowledge, meaning that I'm going to get my ass reamed on labor rates, on all of the things that go into bidding, projects and or service work and things like that. So the only way for me to differentiate, the only way for me to be more expensive than you is so that there's clarity within that customer. They go, oh, I didn't know you did that. Oh, I didn't know that your guy's a level 3 thermographer. I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that you guys did all of these things. I thought you guys just did this. But very, very few customers will ever have a chance to really understand what your contractor does, because contractors never take the time to go, you know what, I'm leaving the office, I'm going to get out of my cubicle, and I'm going to go see Dustin, Sean, Bob, and Tony, because they've only been buying this much from me, and we do this much. So where's that loss in translation?
Yeah.
Right?
Because they only call when there's a problem.
They only call when there's a problem, right? So I thought that quote from him, or that little blurb I got out of that little podcast was really interesting, man. That customers don't get paid on general knowledge, or contractors shouldn't get paid on general. They should get paid differently on the skill sets that they have. But your customers have to know what those skill sets are, so you have to put together a plan to deliver that message to them, obviously, right?
Yeah, man, that is a hell of an insight. Truly. Something else stuck out to me the other day when we were talking. You had mentioned part of the training, or what you guys do as a team to help scale companies. You talked about this idea of there being like a salesperson at the company and electricians at the company and like office people. And a lot of them don't understand each other's job enough, so that like if a salesperson doesn't know electrical stuff, how are they going to sell electrical stuff? So you talked about this idea of you guys kind of training everybody on everything together as an organization. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah. When we talk about scaling, we're talking about scaling the service and maintenance sides of the business. Most contractors do not want to scale or aren't interested in scaling the entire business. They're more comfortable in not knowing what it is that they don't know.
Yeah.
And what we find ourselves is once we start scaling the service and maintenance side of the business, our business model is designed to take over the other parts of the business because there's a trickle up effect. And let me explain. When I have a salesperson that's been trained on selling my company as a full service contractor, there's a lot of things that happen. When I have a salesperson that's trained on how to sell compliancy within 70E and 70B, they understand the inner workings of 70E. They understand where in 70B it mentions where my touch points are for switchgear, drives, motors, all those things. They understand condition of maintenance. They understand serviceable, non-serviceable, limited service. And they combine that technical knowledge with the sales knowledge. There's some really exciting things that happen. So from a team perspective, in order to grow out your service side of your business, you need somebody, Dustin, that's dedicated to go out and sell multi-year service agreements.
Okay.
It's not a part-time thing, man. It can't be like a project manager where I'm going to give him some training. I'm going to give him some training on sales, some training on technical, some training on some of the technology being used. And then if I think that he's going to go out and actually have success in going out once in a while and doing that, never going to happen.
Right.
Ever. That will never, ever happen. So if I'm going to scale this thing out, the team that I need a dedicated salesperson, which we call an electrical services consultant. His job is to be trained on the things we're talking about, but to target the vertical markets that have the highest need and the shortest sales cycles. Make sense?
Yeah.
Highest need would be the vertical markets that we just talked about, and understanding within those vertical markets, which ones have the shortest closing time, right? My sales process is a step-by-step process of start to finish, but my sales cycle is how long it takes for things to close.
Sure.
So I need to have a focus on which vertical markets have the highest need and the shortest sales cycle. So I need a dedicated person to do that.
That makes sense.
I also need, it does. I also need 2 electrician technicians to go out and deliver the service agreements, perform the scope of work that I've written for that particular vertical or for that particular customer. I need a really, really good service GM that is feeding me, the salesperson, the leads, and all of the things that come into my service department for emergency calls that came in, simple panel replacements, just overall servicing X, Y, and Z company for the last 15 to 20 years, whatever it is. And I need an administrator that's going to help keep track of all the service agreements and then all of the renewals that come in that renew from year to year. And I am selling, I'm selling multi-year service agreements. So I'm selling a 3-year agreement. The reason why the 3-year agreement is because the standards renew every 3 years.
Yeah. So that's basically that's talking about a sales team getting added to an electrical contracting company, right? You would view that as a sales team?
That's an interesting way to put it, because if I look at, let's just say that you're a contractor and you do service. You're the GM for that service. I already have you. You've been managing service for a long time. The calls that come in, emergency calls, maybe you have 5 or 10 trucks, you're managing all that service, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You probably already have an administrator that is the person that's directing all of these people, these service calls, these trucks, these emergency calls and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. You already have technicians on your org chart that are doing the work, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that I normally don't have is I don't ever really have a dedicated, sales professional that's been trained to specifically sell service and maintenance contracts. So when you say put together a service team, what contractors don't really understand is that 95% of the business model that we're asking you to implement, you already have in place.
Okay.
What
it's
we're
just
asking
shifting.
you, sure, is to think differently. And 9 out of 10 times, what we have found is that, which is really exciting, all of our clients right now, their sales professionals, except for one, are all ex-service electrician technicians.
Which makes sense.
It does, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I have a guy that was maybe on a truck for 5 or 10 years. He's gone out. He's solved problems. He understands code. He understands the standards. All we have to do is train him to understand the subject of selling within an industry that he's been cutting his teeth on for the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years even.
Yeah, that seems like the perfect next progression then.
Much easier for me to train a technical person to be salesy than it is for me to train a salesy person to understand technical.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you look at those electricians, they're already problem solvers to begin with because they were part of the service division. So it really is a win-win. So all the folks that are selling service agreements right now for the folks that we're working with, except for one, all those guys are, I want to say X because they're still service electricians here. But all those guys at some point were service electricians that went, you know what? I can do this, man. I can, you want to pull me off of a truck to start talking to customers now and to start selling these service agreements and to sell this tech? Hell yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice change of pace, especially if you get a guy that's, been on the truck for a long time and is looking for options to help build himself out here. We've seen just amazing, globally, we've seen amazing success with taking existing service electricians and turning them into very powerful consultative salespeople. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, truly, I feel like every call that you get as an electrician, they're calling you because you're the expert in something. So for your ability to give knowledge to customers, like you're in the perfect seat already. Like I used to sell computers many years ago. And the best thing was like they were just calling with a credit card. There was no outreach, cold calling. It wasn't a hard sales process.
Yeah.
You just have to be knowledgeable and respectful and kind of build a little bit of rapport, and then you've got it. It's not very hard. And if you already know the technical side, like the guys that knew how to build servers and how all computer architecture worked, they were such good salespeople because there was nothing they didn't know, and they could make the buyer just feel at ease without having to be like, oh, let me call somebody else and ask those questions for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a perfect fit for a former field person to be a salesperson.
Absolutely. 100%.
Well, can you talk a little bit more about specifically what you guys do as an organization? Like if I were to hire you, what is your process? Do you have like a software that you use, or like how do you do all of this?
So if somebody was to hire Sean Samson Training, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to come through a 1-week training that we call our Empower Conference. That happens twice a year. It happens in January, and we have a next one coming up in July. And what those contractors experience is a 1-week training with our team, and that training looks like the first 2 days are a master class, literally in the inner workings of 70E and 70B and of 70. What's the relationship between OSHA and 70E? What's the relationship between OSHA and 70B? What is pull-through work? Where does it say? What are the 6 steps of compliancy that I'm selling? And that's the other key part here too, is we teach contractors to get rid of selling a la carte technology and start selling compliancy that's based off of the standards. Because when you do that, it doesn't become a price conversation anymore. You can't match up my infrared price with your infrared price. You can't match up my power quality price with your power quality price. We teach you how to develop programs that are associated with all those technologies, but isn't line item out with all the cost. You have a cost for year 1, you got a cost for year 2, and you got a cost for year 3. So those first 2-day master classes, we teach you how to do that. Wednesday and Thursday are breakout sessions with the technical trainers, or the technical people going with our technical trainer, Kylie Taylor, who also serves on the 70B technical committee, and the salespeople and general managers come with me. And on Wednesday and Thursday, we have separate sessions, technical session, sales session. He's training the technicians on how to deliver and test the work using our tools. We're training the salespeople on how to sell agreements. On Friday, it is back together as a team again, and Friday is a complete wrap-up pretty much of everything that we went through that week, to make sure that by the time those contractors leave on Friday, there's as much clarity as possible, even though we're mashing all of this training into them within that 5-day period. The post-training is really important too. We don't take on any contractors unless we're at a 2-year agreement with them, because it takes contractors about 24 months to be able to interpret the training and the technology, not only to their internal teams, but also to the customers that they're going out to solicit to. It just, for lack of better words, it takes time, man. You have to scale up in order to find, the success in doing these things. So it takes about 24 months to do that. After they come through Empower training, we are working with them once a quarter in the field at their offices. There are weekly meetings. There are virtual meetings every single week. There is a slurry of touch points when they become an SST contractor, I guess, if that makes sense. You had mentioned the question that you also made. You said, or is there a software? Yeah, our EMA Plus software is launching at the end of this year, and we are really, really excited about that. It's a standalone program now, but it'll be a SaaS-based, subscription-based software.
Is that something then that I could pay for that doesn't require me paying you guys to do all the training and coming out to the facilities?
Well, what EMA Plus does is it takes your assets that you've inventoried, your switchgear sections, drives, motors, disconnects, part of your 600 volt system, and you dump those into the EMA Plus software, and it's going to tell you the exact asset times you need to perform the maintenance on those particular components. Okay. So if you assign infrared ultrasonic, if you assign de-energized testing to it, if you assign whatever you assign to it, it knows that the exact testing time it takes, not labor unit, the testing time that it takes for that asset. So since about 2007, maybe a little early on, I've been collecting all of the time it takes for electricians to perform the maintenance once the cover is off. So it's very, very asset specific. And then it calculates your 3-year agreement, prints out your 3-year agreement, and then also develops your deliverable, which is the EMA report that goes back to the customer that says, hey, Mr. Customer, this is critical, this is severe, this is an alert column, this is a cost to repair those things, and this is how much time you have before we think that this asset's going to fail and take a shit. Yeah.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of a software out there that is a competitor to that?
No. The software is out there right now. We'll print out reports and have some very sexy, over-engineered 70E and 70B driven, AI-driven software. But none of those have the asset times that we have, because our asset times are literal because of me selling this and me coaching and training this thing in 16 countries. Mm. So it's my data from having done it myself and watching you guys as electricians perform the actual maintenance. So that's the data that I've developed over the years, and that's the data that I had inside of the EMA Plus. It isn't a wing and a prayer and hoping that I make hours simply because I threw 5 hours at that asset. It's literally the time that it takes to do that testing based on the scope of work that you're assigning to it.
Okay, so you're building multi-year contracts, selling us to sell multi-year contracts. I like
Why
it.
be the guy? Why be the guy? I might as well be the guy doing the same exact thing as I'm teaching, right? Because we understand the value of predictable recurring revenue as well, right? So
Yeah, well, I mean, for anything to be sustainable and to work and to have,
Agreed.
When you're talking about scaling something at this level, you have to have repetitive touch with your customer base. So, like as a contractor, I'm going to have millions of questions. So it feels good to know that I would have essentially a consultant that can help me scale my company while I'm actually doing it.
yeah,
So that's great.
And like I said, there's using a particular service and maintenance business model that is implemented, there is that trickle up effect, because contractors will never make money just selling service agreements. They're going to find some success, but the trickle up effect is the pull through work, Dustin, that comes from the hustle of selling service agreements. So the way that this thing scales up is, for every service agreement that I sell, I want to get a $3 return in pull-through work or project work. So if I sell you a $10,000 service agreement, throughout the life of that particular customer, I want to get a $3 return, and I want to try to get it as quickly as I possibly can. So if I'm going to sell you $10,000, I want to make sure that I'm getting a $30,000 return from the hustle of that $10,000. So the pull through could be, from my maintenance agreement, you have to repair this, Dustin. You have to replace that, Dustin. The pull through can also be, Sean, now that we're working together on the maintenance side, I need a lighting retrofit done on my main warehouse, and I need these drives replaced. Can you do that for me? So the pull-through work is the repair replacement, or just from the relationship, getting that small project work that you would have never got had you not had a sales process and started down the path of selling service and maintenance agreements.
Yeah, man, that's great.
So this thing can be scaled infinitely as long as I am concentrating on the pull-through work that came from the service agreements. I can't just concentrate on service agreements, because I'm never going to have the revenue and the opportunities that I'm going to need if I just concentrate on that $10,000.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and as an organization, I think in general, like, it seems to me, at least, I've never run like $100 million company before, but it seems like if you are staying transactional, you don't have anything comfortable as a bed. And it seems like
Correct.
Switching over to service contracts, you actually have a strong, consistent bed, so that the new money that's coming in can really be that transactional work. You don't have to worry about that
Correct.
side of the business anymore.
Correct. You are 100% right, man. I'm going to build that out real quick and make sense of this. You're talking about recurring revenue and reoccurring revenue is what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. You said that there was a difference, and I didn't catch that before.
Yeah. My recurring revenue is my predictable recurring revenue. I know the multiples that are coming in, that compounds every single year. Reoccurring revenue is revenue that may happen every single year, but I don't know what those values are.
Okay.
So if you're with Frito-Lay and I do business, I did $25,000 with you last year, and then this year you're having a great year, like, dude, I'm going to give you $100,000 this year. But the year after that, you guys are having a real crappy year, and I get $5,000 out of you. That's reoccurring revenue. There's nothing about that reoccurring revenue that I can plan on with my team. I can't even scale my teams because I have no idea what I'm going to get from you.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a massive difference in that, from a dollars and cents perspective, and from a compounding value perspective, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. So recurring revenue is what you're talking about, where you have a very specific, repeatable revenue.
Correct. I know what the face value is of those service agreements every single year. Like if I'm selling 50 agreements this year, and I know that I sold $500,000 this year, I know that next year I'm looking at my 50 service agreements. I know I'm not going to renew all those. So let's just say that I get 85-90% renewal off of the service agreements I sell this year. I know what I have for sure coming in next year already.
Yeah. And Jesus, even that's like a great relief.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
So obviously that's the big difference between that recurring and that reoccurring type of revenue. So I have a couple of exercises or a couple of different workshop types of ideas for your audience that I think are going to be good to help them build out their businesses and things to think about.
All right.
The first exercise for them is for them to get together with their team or teams and do what I call a top 5 client, bottom 5 customer rollout.
Okay.
What that means is they need to get into a room with a whiteboard or an easel, and the exercise is put your top 5 clients on that whiteboard. List out your top 5 clients, and then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to start listing the characteristics of those top 5 clients and why they are in your top 5 client bucket. They're good payers. We have access to decision makers. The vertical markets make perfect sense for the skill sets and the products and services that we offer. They never hassle us for price. If I bid $50,000 a year, I'm getting $40,000 a year in return from those bids. They basically, take whatever we say and they go, yep, we're gonna roll with that. There's lots of reasons why somebody's a client. What I'd like you to do, Mr. Contractor, is put your top 5 clients on a board, get with your team, or put your top 10 or top 20, whatever you want, but start with your top 5 and start building out who those top 5 are and what are the characteristics of those top 5. It's an amazing exercise, and what you're gonna find is the ideas of who you want to go after more that are in that top 5 bucket. Who else do we have on our line card that are the folks that are like that, and why aren't we touching base with those folks?
Yeah.
Then next to that, I want you to do the exact opposite. I want you to take your bottom 5 customers and list out those characteristics of why they're your bottom 5. We bid $100,000 a year and I win $5,000, but we still put together numbers for them. They pay us 60, 90 days late. They're always calling and bitching about stuff. Very rarely do I ever get to decision makers. I don't have a relationship with anybody inside. I just have to email stuff over, and then if they're ready, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there's all these variables of top 5 and bottom 5. So once you get a visual of what those are, you need to start making some decisions as a contractor, man. Like, do I really want to keep going after these bottom 5 customers and having them drain my resource? My margins are shitty. I'm not getting really hardly any business from them, but we keep going after it and going after it and going after it. You're losing money on your bottom 5. You're making money on your top 5. So start doing that exercise and then figure out those characteristics and then put together a plan of what you want to do to drop those bottom 5 and capitalize on more of the top 5, not just cross-selling the top 5, because I'm not going to have growth with cross-selling my top 5.
Yeah.
I have to connect with new money, Dustin. I can't rely on my top 5 to bring in the dollars and cents I'm going to need to keep my contracting organization open.
Yeah, and that gives you a template then for what the top 10, 15, 20 need to be, because you're going to only chase after things that look like that top 5 probably, right? Yeah.
And then the second exercise is really great because it gives you an idea of why you may have started a service division, and in particular, a service division to begin with. We have a thing called our 3 pillars to higher valuation. The 3 pillars to higher valuation are predictable recurring revenue, increased negotiated project work, and multi-year service agreements. If you have a service division, you need to build out your service division based on those 3 pillars. And use what I call the sticky note approach. Not a lot of science behind the sticky note approach, but it serves a purpose. If you can list out those 3 pillars to higher evaluation, you list out multi-year service agreements. What do I need as a contractor to develop multi-year service agreements? I need the people, I need the faces, I need the technology, I need the AI efficiency, I need the training, I need all these things to build out these multi-year service agreements, right? Then I need to figure out, okay, how do I increase my negotiated project opportunities based on the hustle of my service agreements? I need competent people. I may need electricians, technicians. I may need to dedicate project managers. There's all these different steps that I need to build out in each one of those, right?
Yeah.
So take those three as an example and use what I call the sticky note approach, because if you put those three on a whiteboard and you start building out what you're going to need for each one of those pillars, you're going to start getting a better understanding of the people that you'll need, the faces that you need, the technology that you need, the processes that you need. Maybe you got to start moving some folks around on the organizational chart. Maybe you're not the right guy to be my service manager, dude. Sorry to give you the bad news, right?
Yeah.
Or, whatever moves I have to make. So, those are really two great exercises, is that top 5 client, bottom 5 customer, and then building out my service department using multi-year service agreements, predictable recurring revenue, and increased negotiated projects, and building those out with sticky notes with your team, and getting everybody just an idea of, well, when does that happen? Well, who does that go to? Where's the handoff of this person? When this comes in, who does it go to here? And you're going to find that when you get really excited, competent people in those types of meetings, there's a lot of good that comes out of building out those processes, because it's fun. Odds are your team hasn't done it before.
Yeah.
Right? And because they haven't done it before, they don't understand the boundaries. And lots of times when you don't understand the boundaries, you get more out of people because they don't understand the rules.
Right.
Right? So your listeners, those are two good exercises or workshops to key in on, man. And they're gonna find success doing that. And that's probably gonna be a lot of fun for them, because I'm sure they've never done that before.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting because it almost like visually seems like most people's method is probably to have like a cone upward sort of, where they've got their text and then they've got this afterthought sort of thing at the top about sales, where maybe the owner does sales, maybe not. And what you're saying is build sales to be the bottom thing and kind of build out from that.
Yep.
So all of your processes, all the people that you hire, everything are supporting these service agreements.
Yep.
That's just, I don't know, that's kind of great. Like I really like the idea of that. It's like find who works, why they work, what works, and then just build everything around that. That's great.
Yeah, you just got to be contractors just have to want to take the time to do that.
Right.
Contracting, everything's like this, man. Contractors need to slow down and understand what's in front of them. If you take the time to do that, it's going to pay dividends, man, because you're going to be able to have an understanding of the separation between you and the other guy, or you and what else is happening out there, So yeah, man, lots of good discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here, man. A lot of this has like put revelations in my own head. So I'm still, small mom and pop, but I'm about to move to Austin and start ramping up a service-based company. And so a lot of the things that we've talked about, even though I'm far from that scaling point in my business, this is giving me a whole lot of ideas for just how to construct, who to hire, thinking about sales from the very beginning of it. So that way, when I get to a certain point and I can call you and hire you, I'm already kind of in a line with everything that you've talked about. So I really appreciate your time here, man.
I'd be happy to help you in any way I can, Dustin. Of course, absolutely, man.
Yeah. Well, so if there is anybody that is interested and they're kind of at that point where they want to scale and they want your expertise, how do they get a hold of you? How does all that work?
Sure, they can go right to our website at SeanSamsonTraining.com, or they can email us at connectnow@SeanSamsonTraining.com.
Cool, and I will drop both of those links in the description below.
Awesome, man.
Thank you so much for being here, my dude, and I hope you guys all got something out of that. See you in the next one.
All right, brother, take care.